While I was at work, my wife texted, "Don't worry, we just ordered food without you." Then she added, "The kids didn't even notice." But when I got home, my daughter asked, "Why did Uncle Greg tuck me in last night?" 3 months later, the neighbors still whisper when I walk by. Last night, Sienna stood at the sink rinsing dishes while I leaned on the doorway of our kitchen, trying not to say what had been eating at me for weeks. "I just don't get it," I said. "You had Greg tuck our daughter in. She didn't even look up. You were working late. She needed someone. And you thought a grown man who's not even family was the right call?" "She likes him," she said, too quickly. It was one night. I stared at the back of her head. The way her shoulders tensed slightly gave more away than her words ever would. That tension wasn't guilt. It was fear of being found out. For context, I'm Curtis, 42, and I live in a suburb just north of NYC, in Westchester County. It's a nice place. Quiet, clean, full of young families, overly friendly golden retrievers, and the type of neighbors who greet you with a wave while dying for your marriage to implode so they have something to whisper about at book club. I work in HVAC solid work, long hours, especially in the summer and dead of winter. Sienna, 38, used to be the woman I'd rush home to. She planned small events, mostly online and from cafes, handling weddings, retirement parties, baby showers. She used to laugh with her whole body. I don't remember the last time I saw that version of her. We've got 2 kids, Madeline, 9, and Jonah, 7. My world. Everything I've done over the past decade was for them. All the weekends I gave up. All the overtime. All the times I ignored my aching back or the dripping sweat because another furnace had to be fixed by midnight or a school system needed central air in the middle of a June heat wave. Sienna used to say she appreciated it. "I don't know how you do it," she'd tell me while rubbing my shoulders or making me a late dinner. But at some point, those dinners stopped coming. The smiles turned brittle. The back rub stopped entirely. And then came the text. It was a Thursday. I was at a site in Yonkers, buried in a duct system when my phone buzzed. The message read, "Don't worry, we just ordered food without you." A moment later, the kids didn't even notice. I stared at my phone for longer than I should have. There was nothing overtly cruel about it, but the message landed like a slap. I typed out, "Okay, save me some if you can," and tossed my phone back in my tool bag. That night, I got home late. The house smelled like takeout. Not a plate saved for me, of course. I poked my head into the kids' rooms to say goodnight. Jonah was out cold, but Madeline stirred when I kissed her cheek. Half asleep, she mumbled something that made my blood run cold. "Why did Uncle Greg tuck me in last night?" I froze. "Greg?" I whispered her name and asked her to repeat that. But she was already gone, deep in sleep again. We don't have an Uncle Greg. The only Greg I could think of was Gregory Vance, an old college buddy of Sienna's who occasionally popped up in her Facebook comments. She once said he was harmless, divorced, and lived a few blocks away. I didn't think much of him. I should have. The next morning, I waited until Sienna left to take Jonah to school. Then I sat down with Madeline over cereal and casually asked, "Hey, who tucked you in last night?" She was matter-of-fact about it. "Uncle Greg. Mommy said it was okay." "Was Mommy home?" "She was in the garage with him. I think they were talking. She said you were working and that it was okay." I smiled, told her to finish her cereal, and excused myself to the bathroom where I threw up everything in my stomach. That was the beginning. After that, everything I saw confirmed what I didn't want to admit. Sienna became more distant. She smiled at her phone often, the kind of smile I hadn't seen from her in years. She started getting dressed up even when she said she was just running errands. She began locking her phone. When I touched her at night, she'd roll away like I was a stranger. So I started observing. Quietly. I wrote it down when she left the house. I tracked the nights she said she had meetings. I even installed a small, motion-activated camera in the garage, where apparently Greg liked to visit. I told myself it was paranoia, that I was overreacting, but some part of me already knew I wasn't. 3 weeks later, the footage confirmed everything. I watched my wife kiss another man just feet away from where our kids play basketball. I watched him lean into her neck. I watched her really laugh the way she hadn't in years. I was numb. I didn't confront her right away. I needed time. Time to protect my kids. To figure out how to keep the house. To prepare for the storm that was about to come. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how long I'd been the last to know. That my daughter saw this man as some kind of family. That my neighbors must have seen them Greg's car, his late-night visits, and said nothing. Now when I walk the block, I feel the whispers. I see blinds shift. I see heads turn and quickly look away. And I haven't even told anyone yet. I'm writing this now because I don't know what to do next. I'm holding on for the kids. For stability. But I don't sleep anymore. I barely eat. And when I look at her, all I see is a stranger who once promised me forever. Part of me wants to confront her and kick her out tonight. Part of me is scared I'll blow everything up and lose the kids in the process. If you've been through something like this, how do you decide when it's time to stop fighting for the family and start fighting for yourself? And what do I even say to my daughter when she asks about Uncle Greg again? I didn't ask her about Greg right away. Not directly. The thing is, when you know someone for more than a decade, when you've built a life with them, you start to understand their moods like the back of your hand. I knew the signs. The restlessness. The overcompensating sweetness around the kids. The overly loud laughter when she spoke to clients on the phone. Even the way she started wearing perfume again. Not the kind I bought her. A different scent. One I didn't recognize. She'd started staying out later too. Said she was helping coordinate events at local venues and small businesses, which technically lined up with her job. But now that I was paying attention, there were too many holes. She always left after I got home from work, said she needed to make up time because of her daytime responsibilities with the kids. That way, I was home with them, and she was conveniently free to do whatever she wanted. Still, I waited. I watched. I recorded. I started sleeping on the couch. Not because she kicked me out, because I couldn't lie beside her knowing what I knew. I couldn't look at her closed eyes without thinking about how easily they opened for someone else. How quickly her smile reappeared when I wasn't around. And it wasn't just cheating. It was the way she'd started minimizing me to the kids. I overheard her telling Jonah, "Daddy's too tired to help you with homework tonight," even when I was sitting right in the living room. Or brushing off Madeline's questions about weekend plans by saying, "Well, ask Daddy if he's working again." It was like she was rewriting our reality one tiny narrative at a time, so that when she finally walked out, they'd already be primed to see her as the steady one and me as the absent one. I saw the plan forming. I knew I had to get ahead of it. I met with a divorce lawyer in White Plains. Told him everything. Showed him the texts, the screenshots, even the security footage. He didn't say much, just nodded, made notes, asked logistical questions about property ownership and custody. The kind of cold, practical stuff that feels like sandpaper on your soul. He told me to be smart, to stay calm, to not tip my hand until I was fully ready. You've got the evidence. You're on the right side of this. But if you let emotions control you, she'll use that against you in court. So I started gathering more. Quietly, I asked my sister, Bethany, if she could start keeping the kids a couple weekends each month. Told her Sienna and I were working through some things, and I needed space to think. She didn't press me, but I could see the concern in her eyes. Beth's always been sharp. I think she already suspected more. Meanwhile, Sienna grew more careless, more confident. One night, while she was meeting a client, her iPad pinged with a message. She always left it on the kitchen counter, and until recently, it hadn't been a concern. But now I glanced at it, then started. It was Greg. "You still taste like wine and sin. Let's do it again tomorrow." I didn't even flinch. I just took a screenshot, sent it to my backup email, then deleted the notification. Clean. Quiet. That night, she came home humming, wearing that same perfume. I pretended to be asleep on the couch while she walked past me, right up the stairs. The next morning, she made pancakes. Sat across from me with her phone, scrolling, acting like it was any other Saturday. Like our marriage hadn't just been flushed down the toilet. She looked up and smiled at me. "You okay?" I stared at her for a second longer than I should have, then nodded. "Yeah, just tired." It was the truth. I was exhausted, but not from work. From pretending. From carrying the weight of this broken home on my back, while she snuck around smiling for someone else. I started preparing the house legally. Made sure all utilities and mortgage statements were in my name. I moved a chunk of our savings into a separate account, nothing sneaky, just the portion I could prove was mine. I made digital backups of every document, birth certificates, tax forms, insurance policies. I spoke to my boss about potentially cutting down on field work in the coming months if custody negotiations became difficult. I was building my wall brick by quiet, angry brick. And then, last week, something changed. Madeline came home from school unusually quiet. She dragged her backpack across the floor and sat at the kitchen table, pulling out a drawing she made. I sat next to her and looked. It was a picture of 4 people. Mom, Greg, her, Jonah. I wasn't in it. "Where's Dad?" I asked, doing my best to sound curious. She hesitated. "Mom said maybe we're going to live with Uncle Greg soon." I didn't blink. "Oh, yeah." She said she was thinking about it. Maybe it'd be better for us. I thanked her, ruffled her hair, and went to the garage. I stood there in silence for a long time, breathing in the faint remnants of her perfume, of him. I felt my fists clench, then unclench. Not in rage, but in realization. She was getting ready to move on. With him. To take my kids with her. To build a new life on the ruins of the one I built with my bare hands. And suddenly, I wasn't scared anymore. Not confrontation. Not of court. Not even of losing the neighbor's sympathy. I was furious. Not the loud kind. The kind that boils slow and deep and quiet. The kind that doesn't lash out at plans. I went back inside, kissed my daughter on the forehead, and began writing down everything I needed to do next. After Madeline's drawing, I didn't sleep much. Not that I had been sleeping well before, but this was different. That night, I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, counting every tick of the kitchen clock and wondering how many more nights I'd spend like this, half in my house, half outside of it. It didn't even feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage where everyone else had switched scripts and I was the last one still trying to remember my lines. I started journaling again. Nothing fancy, just a dollar store notebook I kept in the glove box of my truck. Mostly I jotted down what happened each day. When Sienna left. When she came back. Who she mentioned. How the kids acted. What they said. Not for revenge. Not for drama. For proof. In case I needed it. And I was pretty sure I was going to need it. There was a strange shift in Sienna after that weekend. It was almost like she could sense the air between us had changed. She didn't know what I knew, but she seemed to know I knew something. She started treading more carefully. Coming home earlier. Asking about my day again. Offering coffee in the morning like we were still a married couple and not two actors stuck in a scene neither of us had the nerve to end. But it was all surface. I watched her. How her eyes darted when I asked where she'd been. How her hand would subtly cover her phone when a text came through at dinner. How she never quite met my gaze anymore. People say you can tell when someone's lying by what they say. But that's not true. It's how quiet they get afterward. That silence hangs longer than any sentence ever could. One Tuesday afternoon, I left work early and decided to drive past Gregory Vance's place. I knew where he lived. Sienna mentioned it a year ago when she said she bumped into him at a coffee shop and they caught up for a few minutes. I hadn't thought anything of it then. This time I did. I parked a street over and walked. It felt ridiculous, like I was in a movie I didn't sign up for. I kept my hoodie up, hands in pockets. It was quiet in that cul-de-sac. Big trees. Well-kept lawns. The kind of neighborhood where every third house has a garden gnome. Greg's car was in the driveway. So was hers. A sudden calm washed over me. No adrenaline. No anger. Just quiet certainty. I walked away. I didn't want to kick down any doors. That's not who I am. That's who I used to be when I was young and dumb and thought yelling could fix things. Now I know better. I went home, made the kids dinner, helped Jonah with his spelling, and tucked Madeline into bed. She asked if I was sad. I told her no. She asked if Mommy was coming home. She'll be home soon, I said. And she was. 2 hours later. Hair freshly brushed. Lip gloss wiped off, but not completely. She didn't speak much that night. Neither did I. Over the next few days, she got bolder again. I think she mistook my silence for surrender. Or guilt. Or maybe she thought I'd given up, checked out emotionally the way she already had. That was fine with me. I needed her to think that. Because I was preparing the next step. I got a call from my lawyer. The paperwork was ready. I had everything I needed: documentation, records, timestamps. He told me that in cases like this, especially in New York, a judge looks very closely at what's in the best interest of the kids. And stability matters. So does moral character. So do sleeping arrangements. And I have more than enough now. But what I wasn't ready for, what caught me completely off guard, was what Madeline said 2 days later. We were in the car on the way to school. She was quiet, looking out the window, when she turned and said, "Daddy, do you and Mommy not like each other anymore?" I looked over. "Why do you say that? You don't talk a lot. And you sleep downstairs now. And Mommy's always on her phone or whispering. It's weird." I didn't know what to say. She wasn't wrong. Sometimes grown-ups have hard times. I finally told her. "But that doesn't mean we don't love you and Jonah." She nodded, but didn't seem comforted. Then she dropped another explosive. "Uncle Greg said maybe we'd get to live in a different house soon. With a big yard." I almost missed the green light. "He said that?" I asked, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "Yeah. He told Jonah last time he came over that he's going to help take care of us soon. But I told him I want to stay with you." My throat closed up. I didn't cry, though. I waited until after drop-off. I pulled into an empty parking lot behind the CVS and just sat there. Not crying. Not screaming. Just sitting. It was all clicking into place. She wasn't just preparing to leave. She was preparing to take them. The soft hints. The drawings. The way she let Greg slip into their lives slowly, like easing into cold water. She was reprogramming them. That was the moment I realized I couldn't wait anymore. After that morning drop-off, something inside me locked into place. A switch flipped. All the uncertainty I'd been clinging to was gone, replaced by something colder, more deliberate. I wasn't going to beg her to stay. I wasn't going to scream or throw furniture or plead to some ghost of the woman I married. That version of her was long gone. What was left was someone I didn't recognize, someone who could let another man tuck our daughter into bed, then lie beside me like we still had something real. I made 2 phone calls that morning, one to my lawyer and one to Bethany. Beth didn't ask questions. Just said, "Whatever you need. You got it." I told her to make room for the kids that weekend, maybe longer. At home, I kept things normal. Cooked. Did the laundry. Cleaned out the gutters. Played with Jonah in the backyard. Took Madeline for ice cream after school. Sienna barely noticed. She was drifting more by the day, talking about hosting a trial run girls' weekend with her friend Laura in Connecticut, which I didn't believe for a second. The way she said it, too smooth, like it was rehearsed. She wanted to see how I'd react. Whether I'd ask questions. Whether I'd object. I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Sounds nice. Let me know if you need help packing." That threw her a little. She tilted her head, eyes searching mine like she was trying to read a book she'd forgotten how to understand. "I will," she said slowly. "Thanks." 2 days later, she left. That Friday night, she pulled out of the driveway with a duffel bag and a quick kiss to the kids. She told them she'd be back Sunday night and that mommy needs a little recharge time. Jonah waved like it was no big deal. Madeline gave her a longer hug, but even she seemed unsure, like she didn't quite know where her mom was going anymore. I watched from the porch, hands in my sweatshirt pocket, as her taillights disappeared down the street. And then I got to work. I packed the kids' overnight bags just enough for a few days and drove them over to Beth's. I told them it was a sleepover weekend, that we were doing something special. They were excited. No questions. Once they were settled, I went back to the house and started pulling documents out of the locked file cabinet in the basement. I checked all my files again, made sure the cameras were still recording, one in the garage, one in the hallway facing the front door, one in the kitchen. I backed everything up to a hard drive and a cloud folder with a secure password. Then I sat in the kitchen and waited. Not for her, but for peace. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. Really quiet. No cold glances. No fake laughter. No awkward silence pressing against my back while I washed dishes. Just stillness. It hit me at that moment how long it had been since I'd been able to breathe without feeling like I was doing something wrong. Since I'd felt like myself. I went to bed that night with the windows open. Cool air filled the room. I slept deeper than I had in months. When Sunday rolled around, she returned just after 8 p.m. I was sitting in the living room, lights low, no TV. She walked in quietly, like she expected me to be somewhere else. When she saw me, she was startled a little, forced a smile. "Hey," she said, setting her bag down. I nodded. "Hey." She looked around. "Where are the kids?" "With Beth." I told her to keep them until Monday morning. "Oh." Her tone shifted, like she wasn't sure whether to be annoyed or suspicious. "Why?" I shrugged. "Figured we could talk." She didn't say anything for a moment. Just stood there, one hand still on her bag, her eyes narrowing slightly. "About what?" I leaned forward, elbows on knees. "About the fact that you've been cheating on me with Greg for God knows how long. About how you're slowly trying to replace me in my own kids' lives. About how you had another man tuck in my daughter and thought I wouldn't figure it out." There was a beat of silence so thick it made the air feel heavy. She didn't deny it. That was the part that shoot me down. No gaslighting. No fake shock. Just that look like a kid caught with a stolen toy and no excuse. "How long?" I asked, voice low. She looked away. "About 5 months." I closed my eyes. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because I already knew. I just didn't want to hear it from her mouth. It made it too real. "Were you ever going to tell me?" She hesitated. "I was waiting for the right time." "The right time?" I laughed once, dry and bitter. "You had him tuck in our daughter, Sienna. There's no right time after that." She sat across from me, finally looking tired. Worn out, even. "I didn't plan it this way, Curtis. You were always gone. You were tired. You stopped trying." I leaned forward. "I stopped trying? I was busting myself to keep this house running. To pay for their school, your car, your work trips. I didn't stop trying, Sienna. I just assumed you were still trying with me too." That landed. She blinked fast, jaw tightening. I kept going. "You invited him into this house. Into their lives. You let our daughter think he was some kind of family. And now she's drawing pictures with you, him, and the kids like I'm already out of the picture." She rubbed her forehead. "I didn't mean for that to happen. But you let it," I said, voice cold now. "And you still are." We sat there in silence for a while, the weight of everything between us pressing into the walls. Finally, she asked, "So what now?" I looked her straight in the eye. "I already spoke to a lawyer. I've got everything documented. I'm filing this week." Her mouth parted slightly, like she wanted to argue, then closed again. "You'll lose the kids if you try to fight this," I said calmly. "And you know it." She didn't reply, just sat there, staring at her own hands, as the life we'd built cracked down the middle like a sidewalk under pressure. That night, after she didn't say anything else, I went upstairs and closed the door to our bedroom. She stayed downstairs. I could hear her pacing for a while, then the soft creak of the couch cushions. I didn't check on her. I didn't care where she slept anymore. By morning, she was gone again. Left a note saying she needed time to process and would stay with Laura. I knew it wasn't Lara's place, but I didn't bother calling her out. Let her keep lying to herself. I moved forward like I said I would. My lawyer filed the paperwork that week. I requested full custody based on neglect, infidelity, and manipulation of the children. My documentation was airtight. Every instance logged. Every text saved. Every camera recording backed up and timestamped. When she was served, she called me, crying. Accused me of being heartless. Said I was ruining the kids' lives by ripping them away from their mother. I didn't yell. I didn't respond with anger. I just said, "You did that. I'm just making sure they're protected now." From there, everything started to shift. She realized how serious I was when the custody evaluator reached out for interviews. When child services came for a home visit. When Bethany spoke on my behalf, testifying to the late nights Sienna left the kids with me while she worked. When I submitted the voice recording of Madeline saying Uncle Greg said they'd live together soon. Sienna tried to spin it. Said Greg was a close family friend who stepped in when I was emotionally unavailable. Claimed I was vindictive and trying to punish her. But she underestimated how careful I'd been and how intelligent our daughter was. Because in the final mediation session, when things were tense and fragile and everyone was tiptoeing around blame, Madeline, unprompted, looked up at the court-appointed child psychologist and said, "I want to stay with Daddy because he doesn't lie to me." That sealed it. I was awarded primary custody. She was granted supervised visitation every other weekend, with a review period after 6 months. The judge called the decision in the best emotional and developmental interests of the children, based on a pattern of blurred boundaries, poor judgment, and evidence of emotional manipulation. Sienna tried to appeal. It didn't go far. She didn't have the record, the witnesses, or the truth on her side. Greg? He didn't last. About 3 months after the decision, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he'd moved back to his apartment in the city. Apparently, being a full-time dad to someone else's kids wasn't quite the fantasy he'd imagined. He and Sienna fizzled fast once she realized the security she was chasing didn't come with a safety net. She still sees the kids supervised, like the court ordered. She brings coloring books and cupcakes and smiles too wide, like she's trying to make up for lost ground. The kids are polite but distant. They've stopped asking about Uncle Greg. At first, the neighbors whispered when I walked by. Some still do, but the tone changed. People who once smiled at her and turned away from me now wave at me first. The dads at school events started inviting me to beers after soccer practice. The moms stopped avoiding eye contact. People notice when you survive something with your dignity intact. And I did survive. I didn't burn her life down. I didn't scream in her face. I didn't tear apart our home. I took the truth, I wrapped it in patience, and I let her walk herself straight into the fall she thought she was escaping from. Now, I'm rebuilding. The kids and I have our routines. Pancake Saturdays, movie nights, bike rides. They laugh more, sleep better. Madeline started drawing again, and this time, I'm in the picture. I still live in the same house, same street, same neighbors, but it feels different now, like I've reclaimed it. Like the walls, remember who built them and who stayed when things got hard. I see Sienna sometimes, at drop-off, at the store. She looks lost. She smiles too quickly now. Her eyes darted too much. There's a heaviness to her walk she never used to have. But I don't gloat. I don't taunt. I don't need to. Because revenge, at its best, isn't about destruction. It's about watching someone realize what they gave up and knowing they'll never get it back. And that's more satisfying than anything I could have shouted in a courtroom.